Hey everyone, it's Deborah Poneman, founder of Yes to Success, where we share knowledge and tools for you to live your ultimate life and ageless, anti-aging for your brain, your body, and your future. And also effective communications, where I teach you how to rock the live stage and the Zoom stage and more. And I only teach this course once every other year, and my course is coming up this coming Friday and Saturday, August 25th and 26th. So I wanted to mention that to you so you don't miss it. And today I want to talk about freedom. This Success Saturday is kind of a recycled Success Saturday. In other words, I've shared this before, but I thought it was time to bring it up again since there's been a lot of talk lately about what freedom means and are we losing our hard-fought freedoms. There are a lot of differing opinions about what freedom means. Do we have freedom to decide what we do with our own bodies? How about the right to bear arms? The boundaries around freedom of speech? Is freedom the right to speak our truth without fear of repercussions? Is it to live in a true democracy in a country where the rights of all are honored and freedom is not denied to some and not to others, or dictated by a few? I often ponder that question and the question of a different kind of freedom, or actually the basis to outer freedom, which is inner freedom. When most people think about the great Austrian psychiatrist and psychotherapist Viktor Frankl, they don't usually think of the genius who developed the psychological approach known as logotherapy. Instead, they justifiably think of the Holocaust survivor who gave new meaning to the word freedom. In Viktor Frankl's classic book, Man's Search for Meaning, he famously said, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And what I believe that Frankl was actually saying was simply that each of us has total freedom, because freedom is not something dictated by our outer circumstances, but rather determined by our inner state. If Frankl could experience freedom in a concentration camp where the absolute worst of human depravity was inflicted on the occupants, can we not experience it when we feel trapped in a job or a relationship or a life circumstance? And more often than not, we're actually prisoners of our own making. Now, if we learn nothing else from Viktor Frankl, it's that freedom is a choice we have to make at every moment, and there is always a choice. So let's look at some things we might be able to do in our own lives to achieve the type of freedom that seems unattainable by us mere mortals. First, and this is a part of what Viktor Frankl said, have a purpose greater than yourself. One of the observations that Frankl made was that the prisoners who survived had a purpose that inspired them to keep going no matter what, a responsibility to something greater than themselves. For some, it was a child who they managed to send off to a country where they were safe, and they hoped to be reunited with them after they came out of the concentration camp, or perhaps a spouse they believed would be waiting for them once they were liberated. For others, it was an unfinished book or a piece of art or a scientific work they'd begun. They knew their contribution would make the planet a better place, and they needed to complete it before they died. Those who held a vision of what they wanted to create in the world, even if it just lived in their hearts, were often the ones who made it out alive. The vision gave them the courage to live and a sense of inner freedom. In his teachings, Frankl often referred to the words of Nietzsche, who said, "He who knows the why of his existence will be able to bear almost any how." I'm going to say that again. He who knows the why for his existence will be able to bear almost any how. Next, do what I call sharing your bananas. In my life, I've often worked and played amongst the wealthy and successful. I mean, I'm not like best friends with Warren Buffett or Elon Musk, although I did go on a private safari with Richard Branson and his family. But I do have to say that the majority of my associates, statistically, are probably in the top 1% of the world's wealthiest and most successful individuals. But are they the most free? Although I hesitate to be the judge of how free they consider themselves to be, I'd say that some of the people I've grown to know and love who live in aluminum huts in Haiti are far more free. Why? Well, I believe the answer is illustrated in something that Marianne Williamson once said to me. I just returned home from India and I was telling her about my visit to a community of people who actually lived under tarps that were like slung over tree branches in a junkyard. But they all seemed so happy. And it was just so incongruous to me. And I shared it with her, and she shared with me the words of some anthropologist. I don't remember the name, but the anthropologist said, in essence, the reason these people are so happy is that if they have 2 bananas, they will always give one away. And the reason so many people we know in this country of plenty are so miserable is that they have all the bananas they want, but they have no interest in sharing them. Frankl saw men who had everything taken away from them, including their families, their homes, their work, their livelihood, their possessions, even their names, because their names became numbers tattooed on their arms, but they never lost their freedom to share their bananas. Frankl said, we who live, this is actually a quote. He said, actually, let me quote it exactly for you. He said, we who lived in the camps can remember the men who walked through the huts, comforting others, giving away their last scrap of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Frankl even recounted a time when a guard, at really great risk to himself, secretly gave him a piece of bread. And Frankl said it was far more than the small piece of bread that moved him to tears at the time. It was the human something that this man gave to him. The word and the look which accompanied the gift was actually the greater gift. Next. Be a decent human being. Yet, even though there were those who shared their figurative bananas, Frankl also shared the story of the senior warden who was a prisoner himself, but who beat other prisoners at the tiniest indiscretion, leading Frankl to conclude that he also said, this is a quote, the mere knowledge that a man was either a camp guard or a prisoner tells us almost nothing. Human kindness can be found in all groups, even those which as a whole, it would be easy to condemn. So Frankl speculates that there are really only 2 types of people, decent human beings and indecent human beings, and both can be found anywhere. They exist in every group. They exist in every society. I personally look at them as free human beings and captive human beings. Those who are bound by hate are not free. Those who can find a way to love and be decent human beings, even in the most unbearable circumstances, are free. I'll tell you a story. I remember in 1968 when my brother was accepted at Harvard, and it was a very big deal for our family. My father never finished high school, and although my mother was valedictorian of her high school class, she absolutely did not have the opportunity to go to college. But I remember my mother, when her friends were saying to her, oh my gosh, you must be so proud of Larry going to Harvard. Her reply was always some rendition of course, I'm very proud of Larry. But the most important thing to Harold, that was my dad, the most important thing to Harold and me is that Larry and Debbie are decent human beings. And that's the type of freedom that each of us has the opportunity to experience, to be every day of our lives, decent human beings. And Frankl, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, eventually concludes that there's no final answer to the question, what is the true meaning of life? He says that we all need to answer that question for ourselves. But he does say that life essentially tests us at every moment, and that the answer is revealed in how we respond at every moment. He says that freedom is not found on some mountaintop, but it's found daily and hourly in the choices we make. Decent human being, not decent human being. And finally, Frankl says about the meaning of life, one more quote, he says this: we had to learn ourselves, and furthermore, we had to teach the despairing men that it did not really matter what we expected from life, but rather what life expected from us. So that's something we can all ponder, especially at this time. What does life expect from us? So we can think about that, and I'll see you next Saturday, or hopefully next Friday, at my communications course. It's going to be fabulous. So, as always, I send you my love. Bye for now.